Rain washed over Austin like the sky itself was grieving, streaking down the glass windows of the Heiress Finance headquarters. Inside the marble lobby, Avery Monroe stood frozen, one hand on her small but growing stomach. She had just come from her prenatal checkup, one she had walked into with trembling excitement. Twins, 2 heartbeats, 2 futures. She had whispered a thank you under her breath the moment the doctor said it. But the joy lasted less than an hour. Security guards, men who used to greet her kindly, now avoided her eyes. One of them cleared his throat and handed her a glossy envelope. "Mr. Heiress said this is urgent," he muttered. Avery didn't understand. Not at first. Landon Heiress, her husband, had always been impatient, but never cruel. Or perhaps she simply refused to see it. She opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside was a pristine divorce packet, thick with cold legal language. At the very top, irreconcilable differences. She blinked, thinking it must be some mistake. Then the second line hit her like a blow. Immediate separation, recommended due to reputational risk. Reputational risk. For a moment, the lobby spun. She slid her hand up the rail to steady herself, feeling the twins fluttering faintly, as if sensing her panic. A man in a tailored suit walked past, staring at her. She suddenly felt small, exposed, unwelcome. Her phone vibrated. It was a notification, breaking news, already spreading across financial media. Landon must have arranged the press leak within minutes. The headline read, "CEO Landon Heiress seen with rising model Serena Vale. Rumors of split from wife surface." Her breath caught. Avery glanced toward the elevators. The reflective steel doors opened, and there he stood. Landon stepped out with a calmness that felt unnatural. He adjusted his cufflinks, ignoring her swollen eyes. Serena Vale followed behind him, dressed in a pale cream coat, her beauty stunning even in the dim lobby light. Photographers trailing them snapped rapid shots. Serena pretended to shield her face, but Avery could see the faintest smile tug at her lips. Landon stopped a few feet away. "Avery," he said, voice low, rehearsed. "We can't continue like this. The board expects a CEO with a more suitable image. This is better for both of us. Both of us." Her legs weakened. "Landon, we're having twins." He didn't flinch. "That doesn't change my plans." Avery's world cracked open right there, between the marble pillars and the flashing cameras. People whispered. Someone recorded. And Landon, her husband, walked past her as if she were just another inconvenience to step around. The cold air from outside rushed in as the doors opened, blowing her hair back. Avery pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering, "I will protect you both, no matter what." But she didn't yet know that this betrayal was only the beginning. And the next thing she would discover would shake the entire Heiress empire to its knees. Avery Monroe had never cared for attention, even though she was born into a world designed to shine. Growing up in a quiet suburb outside Denver, she had lived far from the spotlight cast by her father, Elias Monroe, the genius mind behind Monroe Dynamics, a tech empire known for its breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. But Avery never used his name to open doors. She never mentioned her inheritance. She never asked for favors. When she turned 18, she even dropped Monroe from her resume, choosing instead to build a life that belonged only to her. People often mistook her gentleness for fragility, but she was steady, practical, the kind of woman who packed her lunch, saved coupons, and donated quietly to shelters without posting it online. She worked her way into a project management role at a tech firm in Austin. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, but meaningful. She loved helping teams create solutions that made people's lives easier. She loved the small things: mornings with coffee on her balcony, late dinners with coworkers after launch weeks, biking around Lady Bird Lake. She met Landon Pierce at a tech conference in Dallas. He stood on stage, commanding the room in his tailored suit, speaking about democratizing finance, making investing easier for everyday Americans. Avery admired his passion, or what she thought was passion. Later, he approached her at a networking mixer, drawn to her calm, grounded presence. He said she made him feel human, that she gave him peace, and she believed him. For a while, their life felt almost perfect. Movie nights, long drives to Lake Travis, slow Sunday mornings at diners only locals knew. Landon joked that he loved how Avery never asked about money, never cared about fancy restaurants or expensive gifts. She thought he meant it as praise. She didn't know he meant it as assessment. When they married, she insisted on a small ceremony under the oaks in Austin. No media, no lavish vows, no press. Landon agreed, then later admitted he preferred it that way because grand events invite too much scrutiny. She had brushed it off. Avery kept her background hidden even from him. It wasn't a secret, not really. She simply wanted a marriage built on her own merits. Her father had died years earlier, and the Monroe estate quietly placed her inheritance under a trust managed by his closest friend, Marcus Hale. The money, the shares, the influence, they meant nothing to her daily life. She didn't need it to feel fulfilled, but she did need love, stability, a partnership she could believe in. When Avery found out she was pregnant, she cried with gratitude. She imagined a family, a small house, maybe a dog. She imagined Landon holding their child and finally slowing down enough to understand what mattered. Yet as the weeks passed, she noticed him becoming more distant, more irritable, more obsessed with his company's public image. He criticized her clothes, her schedule, even her pregnancy cravings. She told herself it was stress. But deep down, Avery knew something was slipping, something she didn't know how to stop. And just when she wondered how much more she could take, a stranger approached her with a warning that would change everything. Austin always felt like a city divided. On one side were the glass towers downtown, sleek, sharp, filled with people who spoke in stock prices and tech valuations. On the other were the neighborhoods where people lived slowly, hanging string lights on porches and grilling on weekends. Avery always lived closer to the second world, the warm one. But when she married Landon Pierce, the walls between the two worlds closed around her like sliding doors. Landon insisted they move into a high-rise overlooking Lady Bird Lake. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble counters, a concierge who always spoke in hushed tones. Their neighbors drove Mercedes S-Class cars and lifted their eyebrows whenever Avery stepped out in her simple jeans and canvas shoes. She didn't mind. She thought it was temporary. She thought her life with Landon would balance out the sterility of the building. But the truth was, the condo never felt like home. It felt like a stage. Every piece of furniture was chosen for the way it looked on camera. Landon had a dedicated corner for live streams, with soft lighting and a wooden Mont Blanc pen he never used, but always made sure was in the frame. He called it branding. Avery called it exhausting. His office at Pierce Finance was even more overwhelming. Glass walls, stainless steel elevators, a massive digital ticker scrolling stock prices across the reception area. Whenever she visited, employees would glance at her, then quickly turn away, as if she didn't quite belong in the world their CEO moved through with such confidence. Avery knew they wondered why he married someone so ordinary. And maybe Landon wondered that too. As the pregnancy advanced, Landon stopped asking her to attend his corporate events. The rooftop parties in Manhattan, the board dinners in Beverly Hills, the PR galas at the plaza. Avery wasn't invited anymore. "You need rest," he said. "The twins matter more than public appearances." She believed him until she saw photos of him at a Fifth Avenue charity ball, with Serena Vale on his arm. The betrayal wasn't in the glamour or the woman. It was in the lie. but the setting outside their home began to shift too. Strange cars parked near the building for hours. Unfamiliar faces lingered in the lobby. And then the stranger approached Avery, late one evening after her prenatal class, when she was crossing the sky bridge from the parking garage. He was tall, wearing a baseball cap, speaking softly. "Mrs. Pierce, please don't be frightened." His voice trembled, not with threat, but with concern. "Your husband, he's planning something. Something more than a divorce." Avery froze. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. The man swallowed hard, glanced around, then added, "They don't just want to take your marriage. They want to take everything tied to your name." She stepped back, unsteady. "What do you mean? What name?" The man hesitated. "Monroe. They know." Her breath vanished. Before she could speak, he hurried away, disappearing into the dimly lit garage, leaving Avery with one truth that shattered her. Her hidden identity was no longer hidden. Landon Pierce had always known how to charm a room. It was his greatest skill, one he sharpened like a blade and hid behind a perfect smile. From the outside, he was the polished American CEO, pressed suits, confident stride, the kind of man reporters called the face of modern finance. But underneath that shine was something colder, a calculation that never turned off, a hunger that never stopped growing. Avery used to think his ambition was admirable. She mistook it for drive, for leadership. But now, after the stranger's warning in the garage, she replayed every moment she had missed, every red flag she had brushed aside. Landon wasn't ambitious. He was predatory. She remembered the first time she saw his true temper. It was during their first year of marriage. She had accidentally deleted a draft email on his laptop. He didn't shout, but his voice turned sharp, clipped. His jaw tightened. His eyes hardened with something she couldn't name. "Do you realize how much time you just cost me?" he said. She apologized, and he accepted, but something in her wilted. That was the first time she felt like she was standing in front of a man she didn't fully know. The signs multiplied after he became CEO. He began staying out later. He answered her questions with irritated sighs. He insisted Avery keep her job, saying it made them look like a modern power couple. But he never let her see the company books. He never talked about investors. And he never once asked about her life unless it benefited his image. Then there was his mother, Elaine Pierce, a woman who pretended politeness but dripped judgment with every glance. The first time Avery visited their family home in Chicago, Elaine looked her up and down and said, "You're simpler than the women Landon usually dates." Avery laughed awkwardly, but Landon didn't defend her. He just shrugged. Now Avery understood. Landon chose her because she seemed manageable. Someone without connections, someone without power, someone safe to control. He was wrong. The next afternoon, Avery's phone buzzed with a notification from a gossip site. A bright, glossy photo filled the screen. Landon and Serena Vale stepping out of a black Mercedes in Manhattan. Serena's hand rested casually on Landon's arm. He smiled down at her, not the tight, polite smile he gave Avery in public, but a warm, almost possessive one. The headline read, "Pierce Finance CEO seen with model Serena Vale, inside their new power couple status." Avery's stomach twisted, not from jealousy, but from how easily he replaced her. That evening, she confronted him. He came home smelling of expensive cologne, his tie loosened, scrolling through emails as he walked inside. "Landon," Avery said quietly, "did you leak our divorce to the press?" He didn't even look up. It was going to come out anyway. "And Serena?" He finally met her eyes, but with zero remorse. "She's good for the company." Avery felt her throat tighten. "And what about me? Our twins?" He slipped his phone into his pocket. "You'll be fine. You always are." "Fine." He said it like she was an unwanted detail, a footnote. Avery stared at him. realizing something chilling. This man wasn't just leaving her, he was erasing her. And she had no idea yet just how far he was willing to go, until she discovered the document he never meant for her to see. The document Avery found wasn't hidden, not really. It sat on Landon's desk, carelessly tucked beneath a stack of investor reports. Maybe he thought she'd never enter his office again. Maybe he didn't care. Or maybe he believed she was too delicate, too obedient, too blinded by pregnancy to notice the fine print. He had always underestimated her. She wasn't looking for trouble that night. She was simply searching for her prenatal vitamins, which she thought she left in his briefcase after their doctor visit. But when her fingers brushed the corner of a manila folder, instinct pulled her eyes toward the title printed in bold: Custodial Risk Strategy, Post-Divorce Considerations. Custodial risk? Her breath hitched. Hands trembling, Avery opened the folder. Inside were pages detailing how Landon planned to argue that Avery's emotional instability made her unfit for full custody. He cited stress, prenatal fainting, and potential hereditary mental health risks tied to her unknown family background. Unknown family background? He had no idea how wrong he was. Avery clutched the folder, her heart pounding. Landon didn't just want out. He wanted the twins. He wanted to use them in his public image, paint himself as the devoted single father. A weaponized narrative, a brand strategy. She realized then that the humiliation wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated, and it was only going to get worse. The next day, Landon asked Avery to attend a charity brunch with him in downtown Austin. She agreed, not for him, but because she couldn't let him control the narrative without witnessing his intentions firsthand. She wore a simple blue dress that still fit over her small bump and tied her hair back. She reminded herself to breathe. The venue was polished and cold, with glass walls overlooking the lake. As soon as they stepped inside, Avery froze. Every camera in the room turned toward them. Journalists, influencers, photographers, they all seemed to have been invited by Landon's PR team. Serena Vale was already there, seated at a long table, looking ethereal in a white dress. She glanced at Avery with something like guilt or pity. Landon placed a guiding hand on Avery's back. "Smile," he whispered. Smile? For what? Her own replacement? She kept her chin up, refusing to crumble, but the whispers began anyway. "That's the wife? She looks exhausted. Poor thing, he traded up. Did you hear? She fainted at the doctor's office. They say she's not doing well. No wonder he left." Avery's ears rang. The event coordinator approached the stage and tapped the microphone. "We'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Heiress Finance CEO, Landon Pierce." The room applauded. Avery's stomach twisted. Landon stepped up to the podium, flashing his signature confident smile. "Thank you all for being here. Today's event is about celebrating strength, resilience, and the courage to make difficult decisions for the greater good." The greater good? Then his eyes slid toward Avery, cold, calculated. And she understood. He was about to use her. "And sometimes," he continued, "life takes us in unexpected directions. My personal life has recently changed, and while I won't share details, I want to assure everyone that my priority will always be stability for my family, my company, and the community we serve." Avery felt her vision blur. Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras zoomed in on her face. He was painting her as the unstable one without saying a single specific word. She reached for the back of a chair to steady herself, her breath growing shallow. That's when she noticed Serena Vale stand abruptly, her expression uneasy, as if she'd just realized she wasn't the future Landon promised, but another pawn. Before Avery could process it, Serena moved toward her. And then, with the whole room watching, Serena whispered something into Avery's ear that made her knees nearly buckle. Avery's pulse pounded in her ears as Serena leaned close, her perfume floral and sharp. The room continued buzzing, guests whispering and sipping champagne, unaware that everything was about to tilt. Serena's lips barely moved when she spoke, but the words landed like a blow. Landon wants full custody, not because he cares, because it boosts his IPO story. Avery froze. Serena stepped back, eyes soft with something that resembled regret. I didn't know. Not at first. I thought this was just PR. But he's using you, Avery. And he's using those babies. He's planning to claim you're unstable. Avery's throat tightened. She wanted to respond, to demand answers, but the weight of the room pressed down on her. The cameras, the whispers, the pitying glances. It all crashed over her at once. A woman nearby murmured, "Oh dear." "She looks unwell." Another added, "Poor thing. Stress gets to some people." Some people. Like she was fragile, weak, breaking. Avery gripped the edge of the table, but the floor felt like shifting sand. Serena's voice faded. Landon's preened smile blurred. The glimmering chandeliers above swirled like stars collapsing into themselves. Her breath quickened, too fast, too shallow. "Are you okay?" someone asked. No, she wasn't. Her legs wobbled. The room dimmed at the edges. She could feel the twins shifting inside her, their tiny movements frantic, mirroring her panic. She whispered, "Please, not here." But her body didn't listen. Landon finished his speech and turned just in time to see her stumble. His expression didn't show concern, only annoyance, as if she were ruining his moment, as if she were a malfunctioning prop. "Avery," he hissed under his breath, "pull yourself together. Pull yourself together." The phrase echoed cruelly as her chest tightened further. She reached out blindly, fingers brushing against a linen tablecloth. She needed air, space, something solid to hold on to, but instead she heard the shutters of cameras firing. People were recording, phones lifted, faces leaned in. She was collapsing in front of all of them. Serena moved first, surprisingly quick, catching Avery by the arms. "Sit down, now," she urged, guiding her to a chair. But Avery couldn't sit, couldn't breathe. Panic clawed at her throat, heat rushing behind her eyes. She tasted salt. The room tilted again. Then the chair slipped beneath her. Her knees hit the floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted for help. Someone else whispered, "Is this a stunt?" Another, "She's hysterical." And over it all, Landon's voice, low and sharp, "Avery, you're embarrassing yourself." She looked up at him, vision watery, breath broken. The man she once trusted stared back with irritation, not love, not fear for her, just irritation. Something inside her cracked. A server knelt beside her, offering water. Serena hovered helplessly. Landon stepped away, distancing himself for the sake of the cameras. And Avery, on her knees, shaking, humiliated, realized she had hit the lowest point of her life. But she had no idea that someone else had seen the entire collapse from the back of the room, and that person was already walking toward her with a purpose that would change everything. Avery wasn't sure how long she knelt there on the cold marble floor. The sounds around her, the murmurs, the camera clicks, the fake sympathy blurred into a low hum. But then a pair of steady hands reached her shoulders, grounding her. A voice, low and calm, broke through the haze. "Avery, look at me." She blinked up, vision swimming. A tall man crouched in front of her, blocking the view of the onlookers. His presence was warm, unwavering, like an anchor thrown into stormy water. It was Marcus Hale, except she had never seen him like this, out of the shadows of old memories, out of the distant background of trust documents and formal emails. Here he wasn't the CEO of Monroe Dynamics. He wasn't the steward of her inheritance. He looked human, concerned, protective. "Avery, you're safe," he said gently. Just breathe with me. Safe. It had been so long since the word felt real. Serena stepped aside, relief crossing her face. She almost fainted again. She needs help. Marcus nodded but didn't look away from Avery. His tone shifted, soft, but laced with steel. Did Landon do this? Avery swallowed hard. He wants full custody. He's building a case. Marcus's jaw clenched, a flicker of anger passing through his eyes. Not at her, never at her, but at the man who had orchestrated her humiliation. He straightened and slipped an arm behind her back. We're leaving. Now. Landon's voice cut through the room. Excuse me, who exactly are you? Marcus didn't bother turning. Someone who actually cares about her well-being. The whispers exploded. Landon approached, his polished shoes echoing on the marble. Avery, this isn't appropriate. You need to stay and make a statement before people assume... Marcus turned then, his stare icy. Assume what? That you staged a publicity speech while your pregnant wife collapsed behind you? Gasps. Phones lifted, people recorded. Landon's face paled, then flushed with anger. This is none of your business. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice enough that only Landon and Avery could hear. She's been my business since the day her father trusted me with everything she would ever inherit. Avery's breath caught. Landon's eyes widened. Inherit? What are you talking about? Marcus exhaled slowly, then spoke the truth Avery never wanted revealed like this. Avery Monroe is the sole heir to Monroe Dynamics. She owns 37% of the company, and indirectly, whether you realized it or not, a significant portion of the capital that built your precious Heiress Finance. The room fell silent. A reporter whispered loudly, Monroe? Did he say Monroe? Serena's eyes widened. She looked at Avery with stunned recognition. Avery's hands shook, not because she regretted the truth, but because it felt like stepping into light after living years in the shadows. Landon stared at her as if seeing a stranger, a powerful stranger, one he had foolishly underestimated. Avery, he breathed. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice was hoarse. Because I wanted you to love me for me. He blinked, calculating. Always calculating. Marcus stepped between them again. This conversation is over. He guided Avery toward the exit as camera flashes exploded behind them. But just before they stepped out the door, Marcus leaned close and whispered a plan that would turn the entire divorce upside down. The ride back to Avery's apartment was silent at first, except for the hum of Marcus's Mercedes gliding along the night roads. Austin's skyline shimmered through the window, distant, cold, and unfamiliar, like a world she had once lived in but no longer belonged to. Avery rested a hand on her stomach, feeling the twins shift. Her heart still pounded from the chaos of the event, but beneath the fear, something else stirred. Resolve. Marcus parked in the underground garage and turned to her. His voice was low, steady. Avery, listen to me. Landon is building a case on lies, but you have truth and power on your side. We're going to use both. She swallowed. How? Marcus reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek folder. Inside were financial documents. Hundreds of pages. Your father knew someday someone might try to take advantage of you. He prepared for it. Every investment Monroe Dynamics made into Heiress Finance was done under your trust. He paused, letting the weight of that land. You're not just his wife. You're his investor. Avery felt her breath catch. She had known pieces of this, but never the full picture. Marcus continued. If Landon wants a war, he's about to get one. With the board, with regulators, with the very investors he depends on. She stared at her reflection in the window, pale, shaken, eyes rimmed red. She didn't look like someone ready for war. She looked like someone barely holding on. Marcus noticed. Avery, you don't have to become someone else. You just need to become who you were always meant to be. Who she was meant to be. The words echoed through her. Back upstairs, her apartment felt smaller than ever. Still cluttered with remnants of her old life. Landon's forgotten shirts, framed photos she couldn't bear to remove yet, the echo of routines that no longer existed. She stood in the middle of the living room, trembling. Then something shifted. She walked to her bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out everything of his. Shirts, ties, a watch he'd left behind, all of it into a box. Each item she removed felt like peeling away a layer of grief. When she finished, she caught her own reflection again, this time steadier. Serena had texted her earlier. If you need evidence, I have some. Avery hadn't replied yet, but now she would. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. I scheduled a meeting with a top attorney tomorrow morning. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. Powerful. That felt foreign. She looked into her closet again, bypassed the soft sweaters and maternity dresses, and reached for a tailored blazer she hadn't worn since her earlier career days. It was snug around her belly but still sharp in the shoulders. She slipped it on, smoothing the fabric over her stomach. She looked different. Not glamorous. Not intimidating. But capable. Avery picked up her MacBook, sat at the kitchen counter, and began gathering everything Landon had ever sent her. Emails, messages, financial documents, calendar invites, evidence, patterns, lies. She worked late into the night, the twins shifting gently inside her as if keeping her company. The more she uncovered, the stronger she felt. By sunrise, she wasn't the trembling woman from the charity event anymore. She was someone new, or perhaps someone rediscovered. And as she prepared for the legal meeting, a notification popped up on her phone that made her freeze in place. The notification on Avery's phone glowed bright against the dim morning light. She tapped it with a shaky thumb, expecting another tabloid headline. Instead, it was far worse, a legal alert from the courthouse. Emergency custody petition filed by Landon Pierce, filed at 5:17 a.m. before dawn. He wasn't just moving fast, he was trying to bury her before she even stood up. Avery gripped the counter, nausea rolling through her. The twins pressed gently against her ribs as if sensing her fear. She closed her eyes and whispered, I won't let him take you. I promise. The promise steadied her. She dressed carefully, pulling on the blazer from the night before. She tied her hair low at the nape of her neck, simple but intentional. When she looked in the mirror, she saw her father's eyes staring back, steady, quiet, determined. Downstairs, Marcus's Mercedes waited. He stepped out as soon as he saw her, worry flickering across his face. I saw the petition. Avery nodded. He wants to destroy me before I can fight back. Marcus's jaw set. Then today, we stopped letting him set the terms. They drove to the attorney's office downtown, an imposing building of steel and glass. Inside, the conference room felt too large, too bright. Avery sat across from Harper Lane, a seasoned family attorney with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority. Harper scanned the petition, her jaw tightening. He's accusing you of emotional instability, medical fragility, and claiming you've hidden your background. Avery exhaled shakily. He hid my background from himself. Harper nodded. And that will be his first mistake. Marcus slid a thick folder across the table. Here's every financial contradiction, every questionable expense, every movement of funds he tried to hide, including the ones he routed through shell companies. Harper raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. Avery swallowed. We had to be. For the next hour, they went through every detail, every lie, every manipulation. Avery found her voice growing stronger with each fact she spoke. Landon didn't just betray her, He violated agreements tied to her father's trust. He endangered her and the twins. He damaged her reputation deliberately. Harper leaned back, impressed. Avery, you don't realize this yet, but you're holding a legal arsenal. And with your status as a major investor in his company, she smiled. He's in deeper trouble than he thinks. Avery wasn't used to hearing words like power directed at her, but today she felt it. Quiet, controlled, but real. After the meeting, Marcus drove her not home, but to a small press office arranged by Monroe Dynamics. Avery hesitated. I'm not ready for cameras. You won't be on camera, Marcus assured, but a statement needs to be issued. Landon went public first. Now it's your turn. Avery entered the office, hands trembling. A publicist handed her a draft, but she pushed it aside. I need to write my own. She sat at a desk, opened a blank document, and typed slowly. My name is Avery Monroe Pierce. I am safe. My children are safe, and I will not be silenced. She wrote about truth, about respect, not about revenge, but about boundaries, about the dignity every mother deserves. When she finished, the publicist whispered, "It's perfect." The statement dropped online within minutes, and while Avery stepped outside to breathe in the crisp morning air, Landon read her statement and made a phone call that would escalate this war beyond anything she expected. Landon's phone call triggered a storm before Avery even made it home. By noon, headlines exploded across every major financial site. Pierce, finance in turmoil. After CEO makes emergency request to secure control of family assets. Analysts questioned his judgment. Investors panicked. Stock values dipped. And still, Landon believed he could spin it. He sat in his glass-walled office, overlooking downtown Austin like a king surveying a kingdom he believed was still his. His tie was still sharp, his hair still perfectly styled, but for the first time, there was fear behind his eyes. Fear and arrogance, a dangerous mix. He called an emergency press conference. Avery saw the announcement flash across a cafe screen as she waited for a tea Marcus insisted she drink. Don't watch it, he said gently. But she had to. Landon appeared in front of a row of cameras, jaw tight, smile strained. There has been a misunderstanding, he began. My estranged wife is struggling with her pregnancy, and as a concerned father, I'm simply trying to protect my children. Protect! The word made Avery's stomach twist. Reporters weren't buying it. One asked, Mr. Pierce, is it true your wife collapsed during your speech yesterday? Another, are you denying that she is a major investor in your company? And then, did you know her family controls Monroe Dynamics? Landon hesitated. A fatal hesitation. In that pause, his empire began to crack. Avery wasn't watching alone. Serena Vale walked into the cafe and took the seat across from her. No cameras, no makeup crew, just a tired young woman with guilt burning in her eyes. I emailed you what I promised, Serena whispered. Recordings, messages. He threatened me too. I'm done protecting him. Avery nodded, tears filling her eyes. Not for Landon, not for the betrayal, but for the unexpected kindness of someone who owed her nothing. Moments later, Marcus's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked up at Avery with an expression she had never seen on him. Victory. The board just called, he said. Your statement, the evidence, the timing, it's enough. They're convening an emergency removal vote right now. Avery's breath caught. Today? Right now. Across town. The boardroom filled with tension so thick it could be felt through the walls. Landon stormed in, demanding to know why he wasn't informed. The chairman slid a folder across the table. Inside, Serena's recordings, proof of financial misconduct, Avery's trust agreements, documentation of his public manipulation. The room fell silent. The chairman spoke first. "Effective immediately. You are suspended from all executive duties pending full investigation." Landon erupted. "This is her doing!" No one flinched. "She ruined everything!" No one agreed. He slammed his fist on the table. "I built this company!" The chairman's voice was calm, cutting. "And you burned it down with your own hands!" Security escorted him out. Across the city, Avery exhaled, long and shaky, as if the weight of an entire lifetime finally lifted. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it. A single sentence. "He's finished. But you're just beginning." Avery looked at her reflection in the cafe window, tired, pregnant, marked by battle, but stronger than she had ever been. And as she stood to leave, a familiar figure appeared at the cafe door, ready to tell her something that would change the direction of her life once again. The cafe door swung open, letting in a rush of cold air that brushed against Avery's cheeks. She turned, expecting Marcus. Instead, she froze. It was Elaine Pierce, Landon's mother. Avery's heart dropped. Elaine never visited without judgment in her eyes, without her clipped tone and icy smile. But today, she looked different, smaller, older, almost shaken. She clutched a leather purse tightly to her chest, as if it were the only thing holding her together. "Avery," Elaine said, her voice trembling slightly. "May I sit?" Avery exchanged a wary glance with Marcus, who rose immediately. "I'll be right outside." He touched her shoulder gently before stepping out, giving Avery space. Elaine lowered herself into the seat across from her. For several moments, she said nothing. She simply stared at Avery's belly, at the twins who would never carry her son's last name. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "I owe you the truth." Avery stiffened. "About what?" Elaine paused, swallowing hard. "About Landon. About his father. About the way he was raised." Her hands trembled. "It doesn't excuse him. But you need to understand what shaped him, and why I couldn't stop him." Avery didn't expect pity. Not for herself, and certainly not for Landon. But something in Elaine's eyes, fear, regret, something human, held her in place. Elaine took a shaky breath. When Landon was young, his father pushed him relentlessly. Success was the only language spoken in our home. Feelings were weaknesses. Love was conditional, earned only by achievement. Landon learned early that image was survival. Avery felt a subtle ache. Not sympathy, just clarity. Elaine continued, voice soft. He learned to hide everything, even joy, even pain. He became brilliant at pretending. That's why he chose you, Avery. Not because you were weak. Her eyes watered. But because you were the first person he didn't know how to control. Avery swallowed. Then why did he hurt me anyway? Elaine closed her eyes. Because control is the only thing he was ever taught to value. Silence stretched between them. Then Elaine reached into her purse and pulled out a small, black USB drive. She slid it across the table. "This is everything I've kept hidden. Emails, financial transfers, conversations he had with his father's old advisors, all of it. Proof of what he planned to do to you." Avery stared at the drive. "Why are you giving me this?" Tears pooled in Elaine's eyes. "Because I refuse to let my son destroy another family the way his father destroyed ours." She hesitated, voice breaking completely. "And because those babies, your babies, they deserve a life free from the shadow I let Landon grow under." Avery clasped the USB, her hands trembling. She had expected resistance, maybe cruelty, but not this, not surrender, not repentance. Elaine stood slowly. "Whatever happens next, Avery, please know this. You were the best part of my son's life, even if he never admitted it. And losing you will be the greatest consequence he will ever face." Avery didn't know what to say, but she didn't have to, because at that exact moment, her phone buzzed, a message from Harper Lane, her attorney. "Avery, you need to come to the courthouse right now. Something urgent has happened in Landon's case." Avery's breath caught. Elaine murmured, "Go. Protect your family." Avery rose from her seat, legs steady, resolve stronger than ever. As she reached the door, Marcus stepped in and caught her expression. "What's wrong?" Avery tightened her grip on the USB. "We're not done," she said. "But something tells me Landon's about to lose more than just his title." Marcus drove faster than Avery had ever seen him drive, weaving through the late-afternoon Austin traffic with a precision that made her grip the handle beside her seat. She held the USB Elaine had given her so tightly her knuckles whitened. She kept repeating one sentence in her mind, steadying herself. "This ends today." When they reached the courthouse, Harper Lane was already waiting near the entrance, her expression sharper than usual. "Avery, we need to move quickly," she said, ushering them inside. "Something significant happened, and it changes everything." They walked down the echoing hallway, the scent of old paper and polished floors filling the air. Avery's pulse thudded. "What happened?" Harper slowed, lowering her voice. "The Financial Crimes Division received an anonymous tip early this morning about Pierce Finance and about Landon." Avery's breath caught. "Anonymous?" Marcus shot her a knowing look. The USB in her palm felt heavier. They entered the courtroom just as the judge took her seat. Landon was already there, sitting beside his attorney. His suit was immaculate, as always, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were frantic beneath the surface. He didn't look at Avery, didn't look at Marcus. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Harper whispered, "Stay calm. We're in a stronger position than we've ever been." Avery nodded, one hand resting protectively on her belly. The judge called the room to order. "We are here today to address the emergency custody petition filed by Mr. Pierce." Her tone sharpened. "However, new evidence has emerged that must be discussed first." Landon shifted, finally glancing Avery's way with suspicion. She met his gaze calmly. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Your Honor, this morning, our office received documentation and recordings implicating Mr. Pierce in a series of fraudulent transfers and manipulations of investor funds, including attempts to reroute assets belonging to Mrs. Avery Monroe Pierce under false pretenses." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Landon's attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." The judge silenced him with a hand. "You'll have your turn." The prosecutor continued. "The evidence indicates that Mr. Pierce attempted to build a false narrative of emotional instability around Mrs. Pierce to secure sole custody and financial control. Furthermore, preliminary investigation shows deliberate attempts to misrepresent Mrs. Pierce's background to the court." Harper leaned in, whispering, "This is everything Elaine gave you, and more." Avery felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but from the first true sense of justice, forming like dawn on the horizon. Landon finally snapped. "This is absurd. She's manipulating everyone." The judge's glare cut him off. "Mr. Pierce, sit down," the prosecutor added. "We also received audio recordings from a third party, capturing Mr. Pierce admitting he intended to use the pregnancy for corporate branding and PR leverage." Serena. It had to be Serena. Landon's face drained of color. The judge leaned forward, voice firm. "Given this evidence, Mr. Pierce's petition for emergency custody is denied." Avery exhaled shakily, her hand trembling. The judge wasn't finished. "In fact, given the severity of the allegations, this court is granting Mrs. Pierce temporary sole custody effective immediately, pending full investigation." Landon surged to his feet. "You can't sit down." He froze, shaken by the authority in her voice. Avery's eyes blurred with tears, not of pain, but relief. For the first time, she felt the system standing beside her, not towering above her. The judge added, "And Mr. Pierce, you are hereby barred from contacting Mrs. Pierce until further notice." The final blow. When the gavel hit, Landon's face collapsed, not with remorse, but with rage. A rage that promised he wasn't giving up. But Avery didn't feel afraid anymore. As she stepped out of the courtroom, clutching the USB, Marcus walked beside her, steady and calm. She whispered, "It's ending." He glanced at her softly. "No, it's turning." And when they reached the courthouse doors, someone unexpected was waiting outside, with news that would push this war into its next, inevitable stage. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the courthouse steps as Avery and Marcus emerged. Avery had expected reporters, maybe Serena, maybe even Elaine again. But she didn't expect him. Victor Callahan. The man was unmistakable. The kind of billionaire whose face appeared on business magazines and whose voice shaped markets. Tall, silver-haired, with steel blue eyes that seemed to slice through distraction. He was one of the largest private investors in Pierce Finance and a longtime partner of Monroe Dynamics. He stepped forward. "Avery Monroe?" Avery froze. "Yes?" Victor extended his hand. "I worked with your father. Elias was a brilliant man." His voice softened. "He spoke of you often." Avery blinked. Her father rarely talked about his past. She didn't know he'd formed bonds this deep. She shook Victor's hand gently. "I didn't know." Victor's expression hardened as he glanced toward the courthouse doors. "I'm here because of Landon Pierce. What he's done affects more than your life. It's rattling the entire investment network." Marcus stepped closer, protective. "What kind of rattling?" Victor didn't hesitate. "Investors are pulling out. Major funds froze their assets this morning, and 3 board members contacted me directly. They want Landon removed permanently." His eyes locked onto Avery. "But they want you to step forward." Avery's breath caught. Step forward how? Victor tilted his head. As the stabilizing voice, the investor who speaks for the trusts holding the largest stake in Pierce Finance. His voice lowered. "If you speak publicly, the board will call an emergency vote tonight." Avery shook her head instinctively. I'm not a public speaker." Victor's tone softened. "You don't need to be a performer. You just need to tell the truth." But telling the truth in front of millions, against a man who once controlled her life, it felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. Marcus touched her elbow gently. "Avery, you're not the same woman who collapsed on that floor. You stood in court today. You protected your twins. You didn't break." She swallowed hard, emotions swirling. Victor added, "And if Landon regains control before the investigation, he could still make moves to bury evidence. We need to strike while he's weakened." Avery looked between the two men, one representing her past, the other her future, and felt something shift inside her, a spark of the woman her father raised, the woman who'd always been there but too afraid to surface. "Okay," she whispered. "Tell me what I need to do." Victor nodded. "There's a live stream backdrop set up in a private office across the street. We'll make a statement and push it to financial media." They walked toward the building, but halfway across the plaza, Avery felt a sudden sharp tightening in her abdomen. She stopped, inhaling sharply. Marcus reacted instantly. "Avery?" She clutched her belly. "It's just a cramp, I think." Victor frowned. "Maybe we should postpone." Avery shook her head firmly. "No, I'm fine. This can't wait." But as they stepped into the elevator of the financial building, the second cramp hit, stronger this time, sharper, radiating down her spine. She gripped the railing, trying to hide the pain. Marcus's voice was tense. "Avery, If something's wrong, she forced a breath. I'm okay. Just stress. The elevator doors opened to the dimly lit office. Cameras, lights, a podium. Avery stepped forward, palms sweating, heart pounding. Victor whispered, "Whenever you're ready." Avery swallowed and moved behind the podium. Her knees wobbled, but her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady. My name is Avery Monroe Pierce, and it's time the truth came out. She delivered a statement that wasn't dramatic or emotional, just honest, clear, steady, strong, the kind of statement that couldn't be spun, couldn't be twisted, couldn't be dismissed. When she finished, Victor murmured, "Perfect. That will break him." But as the camera light blinked off, Avery suddenly doubled over, and Marcus caught her just as she whispered through clenched teeth, "Marcus, something's wrong with the babies." Marcus didn't hesitate. One moment, Avery was gripping the podium, breath ragged, and the next, he had swept her into his arms with the controlled urgency of someone who'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, in nightmares he never admitted having. Victor rushed ahead, pushing open the elevator doors as Marcus carried her inside. Avery clung to his shirt, her voice thin and trembling. "It's too early. Marcus, it's too early." "I know," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just breathe. I've got you." Her abdomen tightened again, sharper, deeper, and she cried out, the sound tearing through the confined elevator as Marcus held her tighter. He had always been composed, always rational, always the steady presence in any room. But right now, his eyes betrayed him, fear creeping in, raw and uncontrolled. The doors opened to the lobby with a ding that felt cruelly out of place. Victor was already waving frantically for the security staff. "Call an ambulance, now!" A receptionist grabbed the phone. Avery's head fell against Marcus's chest, sweat beading on her forehead. Something's wrong with them," she whispered, one hand clutching her belly as if she could shield the twins with sheer will. Marcus leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers for a second, something he had never dared before. "Listen to me, Avery. Hold on. Just hold on a little longer." Outside, sirens approached. Time blurred into a sequence of bright lights, cold air, and paramedics rushing in. They lifted Avery onto a stretcher, strapping her in gently. She reached for Marcus, fingers trembling. Don't leave me." His hand enclosed hers instantly. "I'm right here." Victor stepped aside, shaken. He had seen corporate collapses, market crashes, billion-dollar failures, but none of it compared to the terror tightening his face now. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Marcus climbed in without asking, taking the seat beside her. As they sped through the city, Avery focused on the rhythmic sway of the siren, trying to breathe through the contractions that weren't supposed to be contractions. Not yet. Not today. A paramedic checked her vitals. Blood pressure's rising. She's under severe stress. "Are you experiencing any leaking? Bleeding?" Avery shook her head weakly. "No, just pain and pressure." Marcus looked at the medic. "What does that mean?" "It could be preterm labor," the medic said carefully. "We need to stabilize her." Avery squeezed Marcus's hand so hard he felt her nails dig into his skin. "Marcus, if something happens, nothing will happen," he said quickly. "Do you hear me? Nothing is going to happen to you or these babies." But fear pressed into her chest anyway, because deep down, a darker truth whispered through the pain. This wasn't just stress. This was the aftermath of everything Landon had put her through. Every humiliation. Every public attack. Every night she cried alone. Her body had carried all of it, storing it like invisible scars. When they reached the hospital, nurses rushed her into a room, hooking her to monitors, checking her vitals, easing her onto a bed. Marcus stayed at her side, refusing to move even when staff suggested he wait outside. An older nurse finally approached, voice steady and gentle. Good news. The contractions look like stress-induced spasms, not early labor. The baby's heartbeats are strong. Avery exhaled, tears spilling down her cheeks. Relief crashed through her so powerfully she nearly sobbed. Marcus closed his eyes, his hand still holding hers, shoulders trembling with silent gratitude. But the nurse wasn't finished. You'll need to avoid stress, she warned firmly. Absolutely no conflict, no court battles, no public appearances, no upsetting events. Your pregnancy is high risk now. Avery's stomach dropped. Marcus saw it the same moment she did. Avoid conflict? Avoid stress? That was impossible. Landon wasn't done with her, and the war for her children, her safety, and her future was just heating up. As evidenced by the shadowy figure approaching the hospital room door with news that would shatter whatever peace she had left. The hospital room was quiet. Too quiet. The only sounds were the steady beeps of the fetal monitors and Avery's shallow breaths as Marcus sat beside her, refusing to let go of her hand. Her face was pale, her hair damp with sweat, but her eyes were finally steady. Fear hadn't left her, but something stronger had begun taking root beneath it. Then came the knock, soft, polite, almost apologetic. A nurse opened the door, revealing a man in a charcoal gray suit. His expression was tight, his posture stiff, a messenger, not a threat. But Avery recognized him instantly. It was Darren Cole, Pierce Finance's chief legal officer. Marcus stood at once, shoulders tensing. Whatever you're here for, this is not the place. Darren held up a folder. I'm not here on behalf of Landon. Avery's pulse skipped. Then why are you here? Darren stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Because the board wanted you to see this before the next vote, and because you deserve the truth before the rest of the world hears it. He placed the folder on the rolling table near the bed. Avery hesitated, her fingers trembling as she reached for it. Inside were printed emails, transfer receipts, and internal memos, dozens of them. Some stamped confidential, others time-stamped at early morning hours. Avery skimmed the first page and froze. It was an email from Landon to a private PR firm. The subject line, Custody Narrative, Final Outline. Her heart sank as she read. We will frame the story around Avery's stress, erratic behavior, and inability to handle the pressure of twins. Use footage from the charity event to build a timeline of instability. Prepare messaging that positions me as the resilient, dedicated single father. Timing to coincide with IPO vote. Avery's breath caught. Her fingers dug into the pages. He'd planned everything, down to the exact words strangers would use to judge her. Another page showed unauthorized fund transfers from her trust, attempts Landon made before Marcus intervened quietly. Another revealed Landon's private communications with Serena's manager, negotiating her role as a temporary partner for image cohesion. Serena was right. It was always a contract, always a strategy, never love. Avery's stomach twisted painfully. He would have destroyed me. Darren nodded solemnly. And he almost did. But the board has seen enough. After your public statement and the financial investigation, they've reached a decision. Marcus stepped closer. What decision? Darren met Avery's eyes. Landon will be permanently removed as CEO tonight, and criminal charges will follow. Avery's breath trembled, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over her. She closed the folder slowly, her hand resting protectively over her belly. But Darren wasn't finished. There's more, he said quietly. Landon is trying to flee. He boarded a private car an hour ago. We believe he's heading to a chartered jet in Dallas. Avery's pulse spiked. Flee? Before facing charges? Marcus's jaw tightened. He's running because he knows it's over. Darren nodded grimly. But if he gets out of the country, everything becomes harder. Custody, prosecution, asset recovery. We're pushing law enforcement, but we're running out of time. Avery felt her throat tighten. So much damage, so much chaos. And still, Landon's last instinct was to escape accountability. She inhaled shakily. "Why are you telling me all this?" Darren hesitated, then said softly, "Because your father was a good man, and because you've shown more integrity in 2 days than Landon ever has, and because you deserve to know when a storm is ending and when it's shifting." He turned toward the door. Marcus looked at Avery. "We'll handle this. Let the system do its job." Avery nodded, though her heartbeat thudded unevenly. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. The twins kicked softly, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. Not anymore. But just as Darren reached the doorway, a security guard rushed down the hall. His voice tense. "Miss Pierce, there's a situation downstairs. Someone's demanding to see you." Marcus stiffened. "Who?" The guard swallowed. "It's Landon Pierce. He's here, and he's refusing to leave." Avery's eyes flew open, terror and fury crashing together. Marcus stepped closer, voice low, protective, unyielding. "Stay here. I'll handle him." But Avery shook her head slowly, strength rising despite the monitors and IV lines. "No," she whispered. "This time, I'm facing him myself." Avery's heart hammered as she pushed herself upright, ignoring the monitor wires tugging at her skin. Marcus immediately moved to steady her, but she shook her head. "Help me stand," she whispered. "Not stop me." For a moment, he hesitated, torn between fear for her health and respect for her resolve. Then, with gentle hands, he helped her slide off the bed. Her legs trembled, but she planted her feet firmly on the cold hospital floor. She adjusted her hospital gown, pulled her cardigan tightly around her shoulders, and inhaled slowly. She wasn't just standing for herself now. She was standing for 2 lives inside her. Her future. Her father's legacy. Everything Landon tried to strip away. Together, Avery and Marcus walked down the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Nurses peeked out from doorways, whispering, recognizing the woman whose story had already begun spreading through the city. Some offered small, sympathetic smiles. Others simply stepped aside, sensing the magnitude of what was about to unfold. At the end of the corridor, near the security desk, Landon Pierce stood surrounded by 2 guards. He looked disheveled, hair unkempt, tie askew, eyes bloodshot from panic and sleepless anger. It was the first time Avery had ever seen him without the polished veneer he guarded so fiercely. When he saw her, his face twisted with a mix of desperation and bitterness. "Avery. Finally. I've been waiting." Marcus instinctively stepped forward, but Avery gently placed a hand on his arm. "Let me," she murmured. She took one careful step toward Landon, her voice steady despite her trembling legs. "What are you doing here?" Landon laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "What am I doing? I'm trying to fix the mess you made." He gestured violently toward the exit. "The board is abandoning me. Investors are crucifying me. Do you understand what you've done?" Avery's expression didn't waver. "I didn't destroy anything, Landon. You destroyed yourself." His jaw flinched. "I gave you everything. I built a life for us." "You built a lie," she cut in softly. "And then you built a prison out of it." His eyes burned, darting toward Marcus. "And he's the one whispering in your ear now? You think he cares about you? You think he's here for anything other than the Monroe fortune?" Avery shook her head. "Marcus isn't the one who humiliated me in public. He's not the one who tried to steal my children. He's not the one who nearly pushed my body into preterm labor." Landon stepped closer, veins pulsing at his temples. A guard quickly blocked him, but Avery lifted a hand. "It's okay." He stopped just short of her. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "Avery, if you testify, If you let them remove me, I'll lose everything. Something inside Avery finally settled, a quiet, irrevocable truth. You already did. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy, final. Landon's face twisted the moment he realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. He reached out suddenly, not to hit or push, but to beg. Avery, please, you're my wife. Her voice was firm, unshakable. Not anymore. His breath hitched, and he took a step back as if physically struck. A nurse approached cautiously. Miss Pierce, you need to return to your room. Stress could trigger another episode. Avery nodded, her strength fading as the adrenaline wore off. Marcus moved to support her, but she turned once more toward Landon, delivering the final blow. Leave this hospital, Landon. Leave my life. And prepare for consequences you earned yourself. His face collapsed, not with fury this time, but with the dawning realization that nothing he said would ever reach her again. As security escorted him out, Avery felt a wave of emotion crash over her, relief, grief, and the exhaustion of a woman who had carried too much for too long. Marcus wrapped an arm around her as she swayed. You did it, he murmured. Avery closed her eyes. It's really over. But just as Marcus guided her back toward her room, a doctor hurried toward them with a file in hand, urgency in his voice. Avery, we need to talk about your latest test results. Avery felt her stomach drop as the doctor approached. His expression was too serious, too urgent, the kind of expression that made the hallway suddenly feel colder. Marcus tightened his arm around her, steadying her as she whispered, What? What's wrong? The doctor cleared his throat gently. Let's get you back to your room first. You need to sit down. Fear surged through her. Tell me now, she pleaded. Please. He hesitated, then nodded. All right, but we'll walk slowly. They moved down the hallway while nurses cleared a path. Avery's legs trembled. Marcus kept his hand pressed to her back. Finally, the doctor spoke softly, careful with every word. Avery, your blood pressure is dangerously elevated, and the stress from the last few days has caused some irregularities in the fetal monitoring. A cold numbness spread through her body. The babies, are they okay? They're stable, the doctor said immediately. But we need to monitor you closely. Your body is showing signs of preeclampsia. The word hit her like a blow. She had read about it. Pregnancy complications, risks, early delivery, even danger to her own life. Her fingers numbed. Marcus heard her breath hitch and stopped walking, turning to face the doctor directly. How serious is it? Marcus demanded, voice tight. It's early, the doctor replied. We have time, but Avery needs strict rest, no stress, no arguments, and absolutely no involvement in legal battles or corporate affairs until further notice. Avery's chest tightened. But the custody hearing, you won't be attending, the doctor cut in gently but firmly. Your attorney can. If your stress rises again, we could be facing an emergency delivery. And the twins are not ready for that. Her throat closed. Tears blurred her vision. Everything she fought for, her voice, her justice, her chance to defend her children, felt like it was slipping away just as she regained control. When she reached her room, she sank onto the bed, covering her face. Why now? Why does this have to happen now? Marcus sat beside her, lowering himself to her eye level. Avery, look at me. She shook her head, tears streaming. Marcus reached out, gently pulling her hands away from her face. His eyes were soft, softer than she had ever seen. You've carried a war on your shoulders while carrying 2 lives inside you. There is no weakness in stopping now. This isn't surrender. This is choosing life. She sobbed, leaning into him. He held her without hesitation, one hand sliding to the back of her head. I'll fight the rest of this battle, he murmured. Harper will fight. The board will fight. You don't have to stand in front of cameras or judges anymore." Avery's voice cracked. "But I don't want to hide. I don't want to lose control again." "You're not losing control," he whispered. "You're choosing to protect your children. That is the strongest choice there is." The doctor returned with papers, orders for bed rest, medication, schedules for monitoring. "We'll start magnesium treatments if needed," he explained. "But for now, rest is your medicine." As he left, Avery exhaled shakily. Marcus brushed a tear from her cheek. "Hey, listen to me. This is temporary. Once the babies are safe, once you're healthy again, you'll stand back up stronger than ever." Avery laid a hand on her belly. The twins shifted softly beneath her palm. "Everything I'm doing," she whispered, "is for them." Marcus nodded. "I know." Outside her room, voices echoed down the hallway, Harper speaking sternly to someone. A moment later, she stormed in, her expression tight with a mixture of anger and urgency. "Avery, we have a problem." Avery straightened weakly. "What now?" Harper took a breath. "Landon is trying to re-enter the building, not alone, but with an entire camera crew. He's calling it a redemption statement." Marcus shot to his feet. "He is not getting near her." Harper nodded grimly. "And that's not all. He's telling the press you had a breakdown and that he came to check on your well-being." Avery's jaw dropped, fury pulsing beneath her exhaustion. But then Harper stepped closer, lowering her voice. "That's why you need to hear this. A judge just approved an accelerated hearing for the criminal charges, and Landon has no idea what evidence we're about to unleash on him." Avery's eyes widened. The war wasn't paused. It was about to reach the moment everything turned. Harper's words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Avery felt her pulse spike. But this time it wasn't just fear. It was something fiercer, something righteous. She wiped her tears, steadying her breath even as the monitors beside her beeped in gentle warning. Marcus moved closer. "Avery, you don't need to be part of the hearing. Not physically. Harper and I will handle everything." But Harper shook her head. "Actually, she is part of it. Just not in person." Avery blinked. "What do you mean?" Harper opened her briefcase, pulling out a thick file, the same file Darren Cole had delivered. "The judge is calling an emergency virtual review tonight. All evidence will be presented. Landon will be present with his counsel." She met Avery's eyes. "You won't have to speak, but your name will be the one that ends this." Avery swallowed hard. "Will I have to watch?" "That's your choice," Harper said gently. "But once it begins, the truth will spread faster than anything Landon can spin." Marcus touched Avery's hand. This is the moment he finally faces reality. Across the hall, commotion erupted. Voices, flashes, distant shouting. Harper looked toward the noise. "That must be the media. He brought more than a camera crew." A nurse hurried in, frazzled. "Ms. Pierce, security has blocked the entire corridor. Mr. Pierce is refusing to leave until he makes a statement for the press. He keeps insisting you're misunderstood." Avery felt the familiar sting of humiliation, but it didn't slice through her the way it once had. Instead, anger simmered beneath her ribs. "He wants to rewrite history," Marcus muttered. Harper lifted the file in her hands. "And we're going to bury that history under the truth." 30 minutes later, the hospital conference room had been converted into a temporary legal hub. A laptop sat on a rolling table, connected to a secure court network. Nurses checked Avery's vitals, while tech staff adjusted lighting so her face wouldn't appear on the screen unless she chose to show it. She rested on a reclined medical chair, Marcus on her right, Harper on her left. Her heartbeats were steady on the monitor now, steady but strong. Harper glanced at her. "Ready?" Avery nodded, though her body trembled. "Let's finish this." The screen flickered. A courtroom appeared. A judge, several board members, prosecutors. And then Landon. His face filled the screen, jaw tight, eyes frantic, suit wrinkled as if he'd spent hours fighting security. He looked nothing like the polished CEO he once was. He looked cornered. When he noticed Avery's name on the participant list, he scoffed. Of course. You can't face me in person, so you hide behind a hospital bed? Marcus's jaw clenched. You almost put her in one permanently. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Pierce, sit down and remain silent unless addressed. But Landon couldn't help himself. This is a setup. My ex-wife, is emotionally unstable. She's dragging my company down because A prosecutor cut in. Let's start with Exhibit A. A video began to play. Audio from Serena. Landon's voice saying, once the narrative shifts, the kids become leverage. Investors love a redemption arc. A hush. Then Exhibit B. Financial transfers, scrubbed clean, but not clean enough to escape forensic analysis. Landon's signatures. Landon's directives. Landon stealing from Avery's trust. He paled. No, Landon muttered. Those were internal adjustments. Exhibit C. Emails he wrote about framing Avery as unfit, about timing the collapse, about using her public humiliation to boost his IPO. The judge's expression hardened with every page. Avery felt her throat tighten, not from pain, but release. Exhibit D audio from Serena's manager detailing the public partner contract. Landon's voice again. Serena is temporary. Avery's image is in the way of the next phase. Replace her. Even Marcus inhaled sharply. Harper whispered, there it is. Intent. Exhibit E. The USB from Elaine. Records of Landon attempting to transfer Avery's remaining trust balances to an offshore account. Evidence his own mother unknowingly kept for years, fearing what he might do. Landon surged to his feet. Stop! This is illegal evidence! She manipulated my mother! The judge slammed her gavel. Mr. Pierce, sit down before I hold you in contempt. He sank slowly, breath heaving, skin clammy, a man unraveling. Then the judge spoke with quiet, devastating clarity. Based on the evidence presented, effective immediately, Landon Pierce is removed from all positions of leadership, barred from contacting Avery Monroe Pierce or the children, and is to be taken into custody pending formal charges. Landon's face crumbled. No, no, no! Avery exhaled, letting the air leave her lungs like poison flowing out. Her hand drifted to her belly, her twins shifting gently. Marcus leaned close. It's done. But right as Avery allowed herself to relax, a detective entered the virtual courtroom with new evidence in hand and said her name. The detective stepped into the virtual frame, his badge glinting under the courtroom lights. His presence changed the air instantly, heavy, tense, electric. Even the prosecutors straightened. Avery felt her heart jolt, the twins shifting uneasily beneath her ribs. Marcus touched her hand gently, sensing her pulse spike. The detective cleared his throat. Your Honor, I'm sorry for the interruption, but this information could affect the charges filed tonight. He lifted a folder, thicker than any Avery had seen so far. This concerns both Mr. Pierce and Mrs. Avery Monroe Pierce. Avery froze. Me! Marcus leaned forward sharply. What does she have to do with this? Landon, still seething in his chair, smirked as if hoping for a final twist in his favor. Finally, he sneered, some truth about her. The detective ignored him. Mrs. Pierce, earlier today during the investigation of Pierce Finance servers, we uncovered a secondary system Landon attempted to hide. In that system, we found surveillance logs, message archives, and tracking data. Avery's blood ran cold. Tracking... what? The detective opened the file. You. A gasp escaped Avery's lips. Marcus's hand tightened around hers. The detective continued, voice steady but lined with outrage. For over a year, Mr. Pierce monitored your movements, access logs, text messages, and even medical appointments, long before the divorce. He used company resources to create an entire profile tracking your behavior. Avery felt the world tilt. He tracked me? Landon finally snapped, shouting at the screen. I had to know what she was hiding. The judge's gavel slammed. Mr. Pierce, enough! But the detective pressed on. What's more disturbing, he wasn't just tracking her identity, he was tracking her health, including early pregnancy symptoms, and messages between Mrs. Pierce and her doctor. Avery's chest tightened painfully. The monitor beeped a warning. Marcus squeezed her hand. Avery, breathe. The detective added, this wasn't just manipulation. It was premeditated control. He planned the divorce months before she even knew she was pregnant. He monitored her cycle, her blood test results, everything. Avery's jaw trembled. He knew before I did? The detective nodded solemnly. He prepared legal drafts months ahead, just waiting for the right moment to strike. And he used your medical vulnerabilities to shape his custody strategy. Tears slid down Avery's cheeks, silent and hot. The sheer brutality of it, the invasion, the cold calculation, felt like a blade carving old wounds deeper. But the detective wasn't done. There's more, he said quietly. The reason he targeted you wasn't random. It connects to Elias Monroe. Avery's breath caught. My father? The detective nodded. Your father invested heavily in Pierce Finance before he passed. Landon's father mishandled that money. There was an old agreement that if certain milestones weren't met, Monroe Dynamics could reclaim assets. Landon knew this, and he married you to secure access to those protections. A hush filled the virtual courtroom. Avery shook her head slowly. So he didn't fall in love with me. Marcus, voice low and trembling with anger, said, he hunted you. The detective nodded. He married you to control what your father built. The judge's voice trembled with restrained fury. This is beyond abuse. This is premeditated exploitation. Landon slammed his fist on the table. She owed me. Her family ruined mine. I was reclaiming what we deserved. Avery stared at him, realization dripping like ice down her spine. You married me to steal from my father. Landon's silence was confirmation enough. The detective closed the folder. With this final piece, Your Honor, we request that the charges be expanded to include stalking, medical privacy violations, and premeditated coercion. The judge nodded. Approved. Landon lunged forward, screaming, Avery, you don't get to do this to me. You don't get to win. But Avery didn't flinch. For the first time in a long, harrowing journey, she felt something powerful settle into her bones. Control, strength, closure. She looked directly at him, her voice quiet, steady, unbreakable. I'm not winning, Landon. I'm surviving. The judge declared, Mr. Pierce, you are hereby remanded to custody without bail. As officers moved toward him, Landon thrashed, shouting threats, curses, promises of revenge that no longer carried weight. Then, Avery felt a sharp, sudden pain ripple through her abdomen. She gasped. Marcus turned instantly. Avery, what's wrong? She clutched her belly, breath fracturing. Marcus, something's happening, something's... The monitor beside her began to beep wildly. Harper jumped up, shouting for help, and as nurses rushed into the room, Avery felt a gush of warmth and whispered in terror. The babies! They're coming! The room exploded into motion. Nurses rushed in, pushing equipment, calling codes Avery couldn't process through the rising wave of pain. Marcus held her hand tightly, his voice trembling as he whispered, I'm here. I'm right here. But even he couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. Avery felt another contraction, sharp, crushing, far too early. They're not ready, she gasped. Marcus, the twins, they're not ready. A doctor appeared beside her bed, calm but urgent. "Avery, your water has broken. We need to take you to the delivery room immediately. The stress triggered preterm labor." Avery shook her head, tears spilling. "No, they can't. Please, not yet." Marcus pressed his forehead to hers, voice thick with emotion. "Listen to me. They're strong, just like you. They're going to make it." But she saw it. The worry etched deep in the doctor's face. She knew the truth. This was too early, too dangerous. As they rushed her down the hallway, overhead lights flashing past like a tunnel, Avery cried out, clutching Marcus's hand until her knuckles whitened. He ran beside the gurney, refusing to let go, even as doctors shouted orders around them. "BP rising! Contractions accelerating! Fetal heart rate unstable!" Avery's world blurred into a haze of pain and fear. Inside the delivery room, everything became cold and bright. A nurse placed an oxygen mask over her face. "Avery, breathe! Your babies need you calm! Focus on your breathing!" Focus. For them. For the two tiny lives she fought everything to protect. Marcus stood at her side, gripping her hand with both of his. "You are not alone." "Do you hear me? Not anymore." Another contraction struck. She screamed into the mask. The doctor leaned over her. "Avery, the first baby is in distress. We need to deliver now." She sobbed. "Are they going to survive?" "We're doing everything we can," he promised. The room spun. Machines beeped. Nurses moved like shadows. Marcus whispered prayers under his breath, pleas he never believed in until this moment. Finally, a cry. High, thin, desperate. Avery's heart cracked open. "My baby, is that—" "It's your daughter," a nurse said, quickly transferring the tiny infant to an incubator. "She's small, but she's fighting." Avery burst into tears. Minutes later, another cry. Her son, both alive, both breathing, fragile but here. Avery collapsed back against the bed, sobbing with relief as Marcus kissed her forehead again and again. "You did it." "They're here. Avery, you did it." Hours passed. Avery slept in short, aching stretches while nurses stabilized the twins in the NICU. When she finally woke, Marcus sat beside her with 2 hospital bracelets in his hands. One pink, one blue. "They're stable," he whispered. "Stronger than anyone expected. Just like their mother." Avery's throat tightened. "I want to see them." He guided her to a wheelchair and pushed her through quiet hallways. When they reached the NICU, she saw them. 2 tiny miracles, each inside a clear pod, tubes and monitors surrounding them. Her heart broke and healed, all at once. She pressed her hand to the glass. "Mommy's here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Marcus watched her with a softness that held years of unspoken devotion. When she turned to him, he stepped closer, voice trembling. "Avery, I don't want to rush anything. I don't want to add to your burden. But I need you to know this." He took her hand. "I love you. I have for years. And I will spend my life proving you deserve safety, joy, and peace, not pain." Avery felt her breath hitch, this time not from fear, but from hope. The next morning, justice became official. Landon's arrest filled every headline. Charges multiplied. Investors applauded Avery's courage. Monroe Dynamics issued a statement honoring her father's legacy, and her own. When Marcus returned to the hospital later that day, he carried a small velvet box. Avery's eyes widened. "Marcus, He knelt, not pressuring, not demanding, simply offering. "This isn't about saving you. You already saved yourself. This is about choosing a life with someone who will never use you, never break you, never silence you." He opened the box. "Not now, not tomorrow. But when you're ready, will you let me build a family with you and your children?" Avery looked at her twins, at Marcus, at her own trembling hands. A new beginning, a new life, a future she finally controlled. she whispered, tears shining in her eyes. Yes. And in that quiet NICU room, Avery Monroe finally stepped into the life she was always meant to live. And just like that, the story closes. But you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed all the way to this moment, then something in Avery's journey must have touched your heart in a personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own battles, your quiet strength, or the moments you survived even when no one believed you could. Life can be cruel, unpredictable, and painfully unfair. Yet as the Stoics remind us, the obstacle is the way. What breaks us often becomes the very thing that shapes us. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Avery did. And maybe in your own life, you are doing the same without even realizing it. This story isn't just drama. It's a reminder that dignity matters, that healing is possible, and that even the darkest betrayal cannot dim the light of someone who chooses to rise again. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve a future built on peace, not fear. So, my wonderful friend who stayed until the end, if this touched you even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs strength, and subscribe to our channel so you never walk these stories alone. We're here with you, always.